Hi, and welcome to this tutorial video where I'm going to show you how to make this mini dress inspired by the dress, the Taylor Swift dress. So I will show you how to make a granny rectangle and then all you're going to do is make 4 of them and then we'll sew them together and you've got a gorgeous cute little mini dress which I am going to be wearing in the autumn/winter because I've made this out of acrylic. I will be putting down in the description all of the yarn requirements, the colours I've used and the amounts. So let's get started. So before we make a start, I'm going to go through quickly with you what you're going to need to make this little mini dress. I'm going to be using a 5mm hook with any type of DK weight yarn. So the yarn I'm using is acrylic. I'm going to be using Stylecraft Special DK. You'll need a pair of scissors, a darning needle and a few stitch markers. So you can make this using a cotton yarn or a cotton blend yarn. If you want to make more of a summer dress, I'm making mine more for sort of autumn winter because we're not really having much of a summer at the moment. So the colours I'm using for this one are Empire, Pale Rose, Grape and Cream, and I'll pop the links up in the description if you want to get those, and for also the hooks that I'm using and the other bits and bobs I'm using. I'll also put up the colours for the more Taylor Swift inspired version that I did. So yeah, let's make a start. I'm going to be using US terms throughout this tutorial. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a small swatch to show you how to make a granny stitch rectangle, because this dress is just made up of 4 rectangles joined together, and I'll show you how to join them together to make them into a little mini dress. So all you want to do is, if you'd like to adjust the size of your dress, the one that I'm making here is going to be about a small to medium, so a size 10 to 12. If you'd like to make it any bigger or smaller, you just need to adjust the chain length. But you want to make sure your chain is a multiple of 3, and then you just add 1 for your turning chain. So I'm going to be doing, we'll pop a slip knot on the hook, and I'm going to be doing just a chain of 16 just to show you a little swatch. But if you're making the dress, you're going to want, for your front and back rectangles, you're going to want to chain 97. So I'm just going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and make sure you chain quite loosely. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm going to make it a bit bigger actually. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then I'm just going to add another one for 22. So to make your front and back panels, you're going to want to chain 97. And when you've done that, you're going to want to count 1, 2, 3, 4 chains back, and in the 4th chain, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2, and that's your first double crochet. So this chain 3 at the beginning here counts as a double crochet. So there's essentially 2 double crochets in the first stitch. Then you're going to want to skip 2 chains, and in the next chain do 3 double crochets. So yarn over and insert and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and another double crochet, and another double crochet. So that's a granny cluster. That's what we call a granny cluster. 3 double crochets together. Oops. See, I rushed ahead now and I forgot the chain 1. Sorry. This is my 4th attempt to do this video. It's been sabotaged by children. It's been sabotaged by the dog. Now it's been sabotaged by my brain. Right. So after you've done your first double crochet, in that first stitch, you're going to want to chain 1. So don't forget that. Then you skip your 2 and make your 3 double crochets. And then chain 1. So you're going to make a chain 1 between each granny cluster. So skip 2 chains into the next one, to another granny cluster. Chain 1, skip 2 chains into the next, a granny cluster. And you'll see why we've chained quite loosely. Because this is going to need to straighten out to be a straight edge. So if you chain too tightly, it'll curl up. So you want it to be nice and loose. So chain 1, skip 2 chains into the next granny cluster. 1, 2, 3 double crochets, and you're going to want to do this all the way along your chain. Skip 2 into the next, with your granny cluster, chain 1, and you should, when you get to the end, be able to skip 2 and you'll have 1 chain left. And in the last chain, we're going to place 2 double crochets to match up with the beginning. There. So that's your first row. So then you're going to want to chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and then turn your work. And for this next row, we're going to be going straight into this gap. Here comes the dog saboteur. So for row number 2, we've chained 4 and turned. And in this first gap here, in this first chain 1 space, we're going to make 3 double crochets. So make a granny cluster in that first gap. And then chain 1 and a granny cluster in your next chain 1 space. Chain 1, and that's all you're going to do all the way across, is put a granny cluster into each chain 1 space with chain 1s in between. all the way along, a cluster in your last chain 1 space, and then your last stitch to match up with the chain that counts as our 1 double crochet. We're going to pop 1 double crochet, chain 1 first, pop 1 double crochet in the top of your turning chain from your last row. Oh, what? There we go. So then we're going to chain 3 this time, not 4, just 3, and turn, and we're going to put 1 double crochet in that first gap. So for a granny rectangle, the ends of your rows will go up in 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and that will keep your edges straight as you go up. And your turning chains count, so that first one counts as a double crochet. You're putting another one in there to count as 2. I hope that makes sense. So chain 1 and a granny cluster then in the chain 1 space, and it's the same again. It's a lovely easy pattern once you get the hang of the beginning and end of each row. Excuse me, each row. And then in that turning chain, we're going to make 2 double crochets in there. And that's the end of row 3. So next row is going to be our 1 double crochet at the beginning and end row. So we're going to chain 4, which counts as our double crochet and our chain 1 space, and straight in that first gap you're going to do your first granny cluster. And this is the last row of this colour, so I'll show you then how we change colour. Chain 1, granny cluster, and again you're going to do that all the way along. And we're going to end with 1 in the turning chain. There we go. So we're going to fasten that colour off, leave a tail for weaving in later, and I would strongly suggest, based on my own laziness, to weave your ends in every few rows as you go, because you'll be very annoyed with yourself at the end if you don't, because I was. Okay, so we're going to turn our work, and I'm going to take my next colour, which for me is the pale rose. I'm going to pop a slip knot on my hook. Now I like to use standing stitches in my crochet. I have got a separate video which I'll pop a link up to in the description. If you're not familiar with standing stitches, I do find it so much easier because I've been doing it for so long, but it's a bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, I just think it looks much tidier, the end result. So in that first stitch, I'm going to pop a standing double crochet. So to do a standing double, you yarn over and sort of hold it on your hook and insert into that stitch. Then you pull up a loop and try and keep your loops still on your hook if you can. Then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, hold your tail with these 2 fingers and pull through the last 2, and that's a standing double crochet. And because we're on a 2 double crochet start row, we're going to pop another one in that first gap, and then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to carry on with our pattern of a granny cluster in each chain 1 space with chain 1s in between. And for this colour we're going to do 2 rows, so I'll show you how we turn. Chain 1, in that last chain space 2 double crochets. We're going on to a 1 row, so chain 4, 3, 4 and turn, and then a granny cluster in this first space. The further up you get, the easier it gets, because you can see how it's creating this straight line. So 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Don't forget your chain 1s in between. Chain 1, and our last stitch of the row is going to go into the top of that standing stitch. So yarn over, insert in there, make a double crochet, and you can just pull that tail to close up the hole there. And we're going to fasten off our pink. Here he comes. I do apologise that you can hear the dog in the background. As I say, I've tried this multiple times and I've deleted it because he's too noisy, and it is what it is. I can't fight it. So I think he just wants to be famous. There we go. So you're going to turn your work, and the next colour for me is Grape. So you're going to be following the same stripe pattern all the way. So we've done 4 of the empire, 2 of the rose. Now we're going to do 1 of grape, 1 of cream, 1 of grape, 1 of cream, and 1 of grape. And then you're just going to repeat the whole thing. I'll do the first section with you. So again, I'm going to start with a standing stitch, yarn over, insert into that first stitch, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then another double into that first chain 1 space, chain 1, granny clusters then all the way to the end. Oops. Chain 1, and in that last space we're going to place 2 double crochets and fasten off. And then turn your work. Don't forget to turn your work after every row. You can see the edges are nice and straight now. So I'm going to do a row of cream. Slip knot. And this row we're starting is one of our 1 double crochet rows. So we're going to do a standing stitch again in this first stitch here. And then straight away I'm going to do a chain 1 and do a granny cluster in each chain 1 space. And the last one goes in that standing stitch from the last row. Fasten off. And you can see if you leave them, you will have a lot of ends. So what I'll do is I'm going to do another row of grape, another cream and another grape, and I'll meet you back up and show you how I go about weaving some of these ends in, just to show you. And I'll give you the amounts that you need, the rows and the chains for your front and back panels and for your sleeves as well. But I'll meet you back up after we've done those. Just 1 more grape, 1 more cream and a last grape, and I'll meet you back up. There we go. So I've just finished my last grape row. One of the last singular rows. So that is going to be your colour pattern. You will then join again with your first colour and you'll do the same again. 4 rows of that, 2 of the next, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, the same and the same and the same. So for the front and the back panels, you will need to do 44 rows. And then for your sleeves, you're going to want to start with a chain of 67 and you're going to want to do 27 rows. I'll put all of this down in the description box so that you can just pop down there and double check that you're doing the right width and the right length. So you're going to need your 4 rectangles for the next part, your front, and your back, which start with a chain of 97 and 44 rows, and then your 2 sleeves, which start with a chain of 67 and 27 rows. And the colour placement is entirely up to you. I decided with my sleeves, I started with the pink instead of the darker colour, but that's just personal choice. That's how you'd prefer to do it. Is up to you. But if you want to do it exactly the same as mine, for the front and the back, I started off with my dark or my main colour, and for the sleeves I started further up. I started with my pink colour, same colour progression, singles, 4, 2, singles, 4, 2, singles, but yeah, for the sleeves I started with the pink instead. I'm just going to show you what you want to do ideally before you start weaving your ends in. So you want to make sure that you're weaving them on the inside of your dress. So what I do is I just take a stitch marker. This first row is the front of my dress. So with your tail at this end, this is the front of my dress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my work so that I know this is the inside, the back of my dress, and I pop a stitch marker for myself just so that I can keep a track when I'm weaving my ends in, that this is the side that I want to weave them in on. So all I do, I'll just show you quickly. I'm sure you know how to weave in ends, and everybody sort of does it differently. And I recently got some sharper needles, which I'm finding are much better because you can get through some of the strands, particularly if you've got quite splitty yarn. It actually, I think, works a bit better when you're weaving ends in. So all I do is go in and try and poke through as many strands of the yarn as you can to just create a bit of friction so that it doesn't ease its way out. And when you pull your yarn through, you don't want to pull it too tight because this will pucker. So what I do is I just make sure I hold that out while I pull it through tight so that it's not buckling your edge in too much. And then I just go back in the other direction and for a granny stripe I just do once and back so that my ends are still close to the join in case they do pop their little heads out at some point. And then you can just snip that off. Job that my granddaughter likes to do that makes me feel very nervous when she's quote unquote helping. And yeah, that's all you want to do with your ends. With your standing stitches, just make sure that they're pulled nice and tight before you weave those in. And that is how you make a granny rectangle. So go ahead and make your fronts and your backs and your sleeves. And I will meet you back up to show you how we go about marking off our neck. And placing our sleeves and sewing it all together. So I will see you in a bit. Okay, so once you've got your front and your back of your dress done and your sleeves, pop your sleeves to one side for now. And what we're going to do is, right, that's the inside of my dress. Let me see if I can get this in. So you want to put your front and back facing each other, as they will be for your dress. So I've actually crocheted mine so that how do I explain this? So that the same colours aren't joining each other, just so that it makes it different on the front and the back. So that I've done the exact same rectangles, but for one I've made that my inside, and for the other one I've made the other side my inside. I really hope that makes sense. So the front and the back, the stripes are exactly the same, but I've made the inside and outside opposite. So what we're going to do is, now this is the top of our dress. So I'm going to mark with a couple of stitch markers where our neck will be. And it's quite easy because the way I've worked it out for my neckline anyway, is I'm going to be sewing basically a whole block of the pattern colours. So the 4, the 2 and the singles, and the same on the other side, the 4, the 2 and the singles. So I'm going to be joining in the top of this stitch here, and then for our back panel we want to mark out the same. So we've got our 4, our 2 and our singles, so I know I'm joining them together in this next stitch here. So you just want to join them like that, and we'll do the same on the other side. So on the front, singles, 2, 4, so I want to pop my stitch marker in that next stitch, in that grape stitch. And the same on the back, 4, 2, singles, so I want to go into this first. There. So that for me, for my dress, marks out this. We're going to leave open for our neck hole, and then we're going to sew up along the edges on the inside. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flip the front up so that this is sort of the underneath of our shoulders. You can check that these are the sides you weaved your ends in. So this is the inside. So I'm just going to stretch that out. I'm going to get some of my yarn. I'm going to be using the Empire to join mine because, I mean, I don't really like sewing projects together. I tend to crochet them together, but with these vertical stripes you would see it very plainly. So you want to get a good amount of your yarn and pop it on your needle. And then all I'm going to do is sew on the inside from the edge. So let's just tie a knot to attach that. Nice and tight. So then what you want to do is all I did is try to make sure that you're keeping your rows lined up. So this first row, second row, third row. So you're going to want to pop 2 or 3, it's up to you, stitches through each double crochet. And you'll always be going into the single double crochet and join into a row with the 2 double crochets. These ends out of the way. And that's basically it. You want to sew all the way along, nice and evenly. Don't pull it too tight or it's going to pucker. Nice even stitches all the way along. And I'm going to do that until I get up to my stitch marker, and I'll show you what we do there. So I'm just coming up to the last couple. There we go, and there's our stitch marker. So all I do then is just pop 1 stitch in the stitch where that marker is, and then you can fasten that off. Nice and tight. I pop another one in just to make sure. And then you can fasten it off and leave a tail for weaving in. And that is joined, and you can see if you turn it, you can see that it's almost invisible on the other side, only the parts really where there's no, but you won't be able to see it, barely. So all you've got to do is flip your dress around and do the exact same for the other shoulder. So join on and sew up to your stitch marker, pop 1 stitch in there and then fasten it off, and I will meet you up then to show you how we go about placing the sleeves and joining the sleeves in the same way then. Okay, so go ahead and do that and I'll meet you in a sec. Okay, so once you've finished joining your shoulders, and here is my neck hole here, we're going to spin it round on its side, and I'm going to show you how we're going to attach our sleeve. So if you get your sleeve, and again make sure that your side where you've weaved in your ends is facing you, because this is going to be the inside of our dress. So what we're going to do is we're going to join, so we've got 27 rows on our sleeve. So we're going to want to have 13 either side of our join. So on the 14th row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 on this central row here. I'm just going to pop a stitch marker in and join it to our very center of where our shoulders join, like that. So either side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're going to want to count 13 chain spaces and clusters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this stitch here where this cluster joins, I'm going to join it to the end of my sleeve, and I'm going to do the same on this side. So I'm going to count chain spaces and clusters: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that stitch there, I'm going to join, whoops, to this corner of my sleeve. So that should be nice and evenly spaced and joined, so that when we fold it all over, both sides of your sleeve are the same. And we're just going to join this by sewing along the seam, the same as we did with the shoulders. So I'm going to pull out a length of yarn, quite a long one for this, so I don't have to rejoin. And again, I'm gonna join in exactly the same way as I did for the shoulders. I'm going to go into this stitch and this stitch, pull it through and join it with a knot. And then you want to again make sure that each space is lining up with your stitch on the other side. So I'll just show you through this chain space. I'm going to join to this first double crochet from my sleeve. I can actually take that stitch marker out now because it's going to get in the way. So then when you start going through the next cluster, so in through here, you want to make sure you're going through the next row. A bit tricky in the beginning because you've got quite a lot of yarn to work with. So I tend to put 2 through the cluster into that cream stitch. And then going into this next chain space, make sure you're going into your next double crochet row. And again, make sure you're not pulling it too tight. So carry on and sew that up, and I'll meet you up at the stitch marker to show you how we go over to the other side. I'm just coming up to the part where my stitch marker is. So I'm going to pop that out. So we've got that sort of make up this cluster. We've got two, I don't know if you can see, two of one colour and one of another colour that we joined. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I go through those 3 stitches all into that same grape coloured stitch on the other side. Oops. And then you just carry on chain spaces into one row, and then clusters into the next row, making sure they're evenly spaced out all the way along, the same as you did on this side. And then you want to repeat that for your other sleeve as well. So you want to mark out your central stitch first, and then 13 rows either side, and count your 13 clusters and chain spaces, and join your other sleeve. And once you've done that, I'll meet you back up and we will see how we join the side seams and underneath the sleeves, and then we're nearly done. Exciting. Okay, so once we've finished sewing our sleeves on either side, what you're going to do is keep your dress inside out, and you're going to fold it so that your sleeves are in half and your whole dress is kind of in a T shape. And then what we're going to do is, I'm going to show you this side because I've already done it. We are going to then sew our seam all the way across the bottom of our sleeves, along here, into your armpit area, and all the way down the side, all on the inside of the dress. So I've done this side, so I'm just going to show you quickly how to start the other side. So I've decided to sew using the grape colour because I've got a grape stripe on my sleeve and on my body. So I'm going to do it all in one continuous seam. But if if that length of yarn is too much for you to cope with, or if you just rather do it in 2 sections, you can always seam your sleeve and then start again in your armpit and seam down the side. So I'm going to do mine with the grape. So I'm going to get a length of that. Quite a long piece for me because I'm going all the way, which will make it a bit tricky to manipulate, but it does mean less ends to weave in at the end, which is always a good thing in my mind. So I'm going to put that on my needle. And then I'm just going to join in on the first stitch in the corner. And you're going to do exactly the same as what you did for joining your sleeves on and for seaming your shoulders. Just going to fasten that in. Like that. And then you're just going to go through and with me here I've got stitches and a chain one gap matching up, if you can see that. And then for my next part, my chain and my cluster match up, so that's how I'm going to know that I'm in the right place all the way up. I should have a cluster poking through, should be able to see a cluster through the gaps, so that I can make sure I'm where I should be all the way up. And as I say, it can be a bit tricky if you do choose to do it all in one with me. Tricky until you get sort of halfway up, and then it's not so bad. And really tricky if you've got a camera right above you, so you can't wave your arms in the air too much. And that is that. So sew up your seams either side so that you are left with a very neat seam, but I mean it will be on the inside, so don't worry about it too much. And if you choose in like me to do a colour matching up with one of your colours of your rose, then it's even less noticeable. And then I will meet you back up after we've seamed this up, and I'll show you just how to finish it off with a nice little border, and then we will be done. So I'll meet you back up after the seaming. Okay, so I've just finished seaming, and just to say, with my sleeves it actually worked out that the gaps of the clusters were matching up. So just keep an eye on what matches up on the amount of rows that you've done, because I had the 2 doubles, then the chain 1 space, the cluster, the chain 1 space. So it worked out that the cluster was in the gap up the side, but on the sleeve it worked out that clusters were meeting up. So just keep an eye on that. So once you're done sewing up, gosh, it's big now, sewing up your seams, you can weave in your ends, and then we're going to turn our dress in the right way. One sleeve and the other sleeve, and then what we're going to do is, and this is where you can play around with it a bit if you like and make it a bit more personalized to you. But what I'm going to do is around the edges of both of my sleeves, my neck hole, and around the bottom of my dress, I'm just going to pop 1 row of single crochet, and I'm going to do that with my Empire colour. But again, it's up to you. You will have weaved all of these in. Make that a bit shorter. That was actually what I had left over, so I didn't judge it too badly with the length of my... Right, where's my hook? I had to get up and get my hook. I'm sure I'm not the only person that daily has a where's my hook moment. Right, here's my hook. Okay, so I'm gonna let's move that grape out of the way. I'm gonna get some of my Empire and I'm gonna pop a slip knot on my hook as we've done before, and then I'm just gonna join to the end of my sleeve, and I'm going to join in the same spot, so the join which will be at the bottom of your sleeve then, so that all of our ends are being sewn in the same place. And all you're going to do is I'm going to join with a standing single crochet, so pop your yarn in, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and that's a standing single crochet. And then in each double crochet gap along, you're simply just going to pop in 2 single crochets in each gap. So on your single double rows it's easier, and then on your rows where you've got 2, you just go around the bar of that first double crochet and pop 2 singles in there, and I do that all the way around. My last double crochet bar, and then what I like to do is to just pop another single somewhere in that join, just to bring them together nicely. And then you're going to join to the top of that first single crochet with a slip stitch, fasten off, and weave in your end, and do the same for the other sleeve, and then I will show you how to do your neck line. So I'm going to join in, it's the same thing really. You're going to place 2 single crochets into each around each sort of double crochet bar from your side. So I'm just going to join in again with a standing single crochet in this first space here, 2 singles in there, 2 singles around there, 2 singles around every double crochet bar, and then I'll meet you back up when I get over to the other side of my neck, just to show you how we turn the corner, so to speak. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the other side of my neck. I'm going to pop 2 in that last space, and then the same as how we did with the sleeve, I'm just going to pop 1 in that join, just to sort of round it off, and then spin it around the other way and go back down the other side. And then when you get to the other side, you're going to do the same, just pop 1 in the join somewhere before you join to your standing single with a slip stitch, and then you can fasten that off, and then we will move down to the bottom hem. Again, if you want to do more than one row of singles, you can. If you want to do a half double, if you wanted to do a double crochet border, it's completely up to you, but you would still do 2 in every space, and that will give you a nice even distribution of your stitches then. I mean, you could even pop in a shell if you wanted to, or just have a bit of fun, have a play, see what you like. Because that's one thing I think a lot of us forget when we're learning a new skill, is that we're supposed to be enjoying it. It's supposed to be fun. And I know crochet in particular, I remember an awful lot of frustration, an awful lot of throwing things across the other side of the room, saying, no, I just can't do that stitch. I still do that 10 years later sometimes. So there we go, just go all the way along to your join and fasten off, weave in your end, and I'll show you how to do the bottom hem. Okay, here's the bottom hem of my dress, and you're just going to do the exact same thing again, nice and easy. Slip knot on your hook. I'll show you the standing stitch again. So I'm going to join in at my join where I've sewn. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both your loops, and you have to sort of hold the tail to keep it in place. It does take a bit of practice, but I just do love how much easier it makes it. And the same again, 2 singles around every double crochet bar, and you'll have a lovely border edge then. And again, when you get over to the other side, excuse me, you want to pop a stitch somewhere in your join, just so that it doesn't pull in if you've got too many stitches in the same place. Actually, I will meet you back up when we get over to the other side, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I'm coming up to my join. So 2 around that bar, 2 around that bar, and then I'm just going to pop in the join somewhere another single crochet before I then do 2 around that one. Catching my tails now. That's why I should have weaved them in first. And then you're just going to do the same on the other side. All the way along, and when you get to your other join, just again pop a little stitch in the join somewhere before you join to the top of your standing stitch, and that's your dress done. Weave in all of your ends. Trouble came in again. So that is that. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. Hopefully I'm getting better the more that I do. It is kind of a strange skill that I never thought I'd be trying to master, but YouTube videos were so helpful for me when I learned to crochet. And when the crochet community went a bit bonkers when we saw that Taylor Swift dress, and I knew I just wanted to do my own take on it. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you've managed to make your own dress. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Hopefully I'm going to be doing more and more content for you coming up. And I do have a community page on Facebook, so I'd love if you would join. And if you do make this dress and you make it in different colours especially, I'd love to see. But yeah, I'd love to see what you make. And thank you so much for joining me. And now I've got to weave in all of my ends. So take care, guys. See you next time. Bye.